a milestone, some home woes, and some cruising along. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Friday, the 14th of November, 2025. Vic and Neil heading into the weekend. We're going to start off with a milestone for a unicorn type of a player. Brad Marchand picks up his 1,000th career point on an assist on an empty net goal by Eetu Luostarinen in a 6-3 win over Washington on Thursday. He, along with Luostarinen and Lundell, top line now for Florida Panthers with the rash of injuries that they have. 8 points last night. But for Marchand, a player that was an impact performer when the Bruins won their cup, and 14 years later, equally impactful for the Panthers in their run last spring. I had said, Neil, when we first started our podcast and we were doing a segment called One-Timers, that this was a Hall of Famer then, and that resume has only gotten better.
I don't think there's any doubt that he's a Hall of Fame player now with 2 Stanley Cups under his belt, 1,000 points, and that I think that trade over to the Florida Panthers and the performance he's put on in this short time. Remember, it's been less than a year that he's been there, only from last trading deadline till now. And I think he has really tripled his candidacy for the Hall of Fame in this short period of time. He's just gone there and he's proven he can do things that people didn't know he could. The thing is that all his bad boy shenanigans in the beginning of his career and throughout his career overshadowed his skill level to some extent. And I think now that he's gotten to Florida, that skill level has shown up a lot more than the bad boy shenanigans. He's not doing as much of that in Florida. He doesn't need to, because he's got other guys doing it. And yet that skill set is coming out all the time. So congratulations to him, by the way, at this point in his career to be playing this well. It's just a really good thing to see.
And the fact that Marchand was a division rival of the Panthers for all those years while he was in Boston, and for him to become literally this beloved in South Florida is a story in itself.
It really is, but it just shows you in hockey, you hate people until they're on your team and then you love them. It's the same. I remember Ulf Samuelsson and how much I couldn't stand him on Pittsburgh because he was such an annoying player. But you know what? I traded for him to get him onto our team because he was that annoying. I remember Esa Tikkanen, how much I hated him in Edmonton, and what a jerk he was until I got him on our team, and then I liked the way he was a jerk. So with Marchand, I think everybody'd love to have him on their team, and that's why he ended up being the captain of Boston. The other thing I want to say about Boston and Florida rivalry is don't forget that most of Marchand's career, the Florida Panthers have been way down in the standings and have been an easy 2 points for the Boston Bruins during Marchand's time there. It's only been in the last 3 or 4 years that the Panthers have started to become a big boy in the league. And so in some ways, Marchand is very, very lucky that trade happened. He probably didn't know it at the time, but he's lucky because he went there and his career has just, blossomed from there.
And what better ways to now be spending the last years of your career? Warm weather of South Florida, Stanley Cup champion. It's all going well for Marchand.
It is.
Let's talk a little bit of Malice in the Palace. That was an old Three Stooges episode for those that are old enough to actually remember that. In this case, we're going to start off with Malice in the Fortress as part of a section where we're noticing some teams that are really struggling in their own buildings. Vegas Golden Knights just wrapped up a 6-game homestand with a 1-3-2 record. Their only win coming against Detroit, a 1-0 shutout on November 4th. On Thursday evening, they got tied by the Islanders. A goal by Matt Barzal with 2:37 left after Patrick Waugh pulled Ilya Sorokin with 3:15 to go. You remember that when Waugh took over the Colorado Avalanche, he was the first one to really start pulling his goalie with 4.5, 5 minutes left. Paid off Isles tied the game, and then J.G. Pajot with an overtime shorthanded game winner. So what's going on in Vegas as they hit a little bit of struggle here before they head out on the road?
What is the Vegas's problem? What has gone south on them? I mean, they're now 7-4 and 5 overtime losses or shootout losses. They're just one game over 500 at home. Maybe the heading out on the road, as we said about the Oilers, maybe this will be the best thing for the Knights to get out there, do some bonding, and figure out what the heck they got to do to start to play a little bit better, because that was a bad loss last night.
There's another sidebar to this. Kira Schmid has been okay. Carl Lindbaum is the backup, has been okay. On Saturday, Carter Hart is eligible to begin conditioning with the Golden Knights AHL affiliate and can return to play on December 1st. And with Aiden Hill's status up in the air after suffering a lower body injury on October 20th, there becomes a real piece of intrigue between the pipes in Vegas, no?
I guess so. I mean, I guess that they'll end up trying Carter Hart up in Vegas and seeing how he is. I mean, they've gone through more goalies than Carter's gone through pills. You remember when they won the Cup, how many goalies they had going in and out. In fact, they even had Jonathan Quick there at the time, although he didn't play.
Yeah. Robin Leonard. Yeah.
Oh, they went through a bunch of different people. So I have no doubts you're going to see Carter Hart come up to the NHL team. Whether he'll stick or not, whether he can still play after this absence is up to him. But I have no doubt that the Vegas Golden Knights will try Carter Hart at some point.
The reception is going to be curious, to say the very least. But at this point, he may be the best that they have available to them.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. Go that far. That's a pretty good stab at Schmidt and Lindbaum to say that a guy that sat out for 2 years is their best option. I can't see it. But I think they'll give him a chance.
Let's not leave that particular game without talking about the Islanders, because 3-0 to start a 7-game road trip. They're 9-6-2. Barzal certainly appears that he is all the way back from that fractured kneecap that he suffered at the end of the season. This team is starting to believe in itself. Bo Horvat has had a phenomenal start for them, even though he did not score on Thursday. So, at least for now, Islanders among a bunch of clubs that are keeping themselves in the mix through the first quarter of the season.
Absolutely. And there's no doubt about that. There's played 17 games. 9-6-2 and a .588 win percentage, 2 games over 500 on the road and a game over 500 at the UBS Arena. They're in the first wild card spot. They're playing good. These are very good, surprising results for the New York Islanders. I don't think anybody except the New York Islanders would have seen this coming.
Another team that has hit a little bit of the skids at home after a big start and several dramatic wins, the Montreal Canadiens. They take one from Dallas on Thursday, 7-0, and that comes on the heels of a 5-1 loss to the Kings on Tuesday. Casey DeSmith with a 24-save shutout. But a big piece of news for the Canadiens here, Alex Newhook left early in the second period. He got tangled up with Ilya Lyubushkin, slid into the boards, came up favoring his right leg. He has 6 goals, 6 assists, and a +7 in his first 16 games. So, it's one of those things that everything has looked great at the Bell Center to start the season. We've mentioned it several times. But now Marty St. Louis' team has to answer a little bit of adversity here.
The most important is that they got blasted 7-0 at home. That was in Montreal. Dallas beat them 7-0 in Montreal. That is embarrassing. In front of your home fans, they've now been beaten 12-1 in the last 2 games in the Bell Center in Montreal. You can get away with a 7-0 loss on the road. It's just a bad night in Dallas, let's say. But when Dallas comes into your barn and just beats you like a rented mule, that's bad. And I'm sure that the Montreal media is having a field day with the Canadiens right now.
But as we say, nothing lasts forever. in this league. And, I feel this is more just a blip on the radar than the Canadians starting to head south. I think there's too much there offensively. I like their team.
I don't think they're heading south either, and I don't know that the Islanders are heading north. I think that these are two of the teams that we've just discussed that are surprising. You don't know what you're going to get. Just when we thought that Montreal was a team that night to night you could depend on playing hard against everybody, beating a lot of teams, they get whacked 7-0 by a team that's inconsistent itself in the Dallas Stars. They're not a consistent team. They lose on nights you think they're going to win and win on nights you think they're going to lose. The LA Kings, for an example, started the year not too great. Now go into Canada, beat the two big Canadian teams in the Montreal Canadiens, and I know we're going to get to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So this is a hard league right now to figure out. I mean, it really is. You don't know from one night to the next really what you're going to get.
And the funny thing about Dallas is they're 11-4-3, and it doesn't feel like it.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. They're almost 700 winning percentage. And if you had asked me to guess, I would have said they were 500 and something. You're absolutely right. But the thing that's gone good for Dallas is the road. 6-1-2 on the road. So I don't know. You really got to scratch your heads about these teams. If somebody said to me, tell me about this team, tell me about that. I mean, the only one that I guess I would really be able to say has been consistent this year is Colorado. The consistency has been all over the place, but I don't want to spoil the show by giving away everything else that's happened.
Because we're going to get to Colorado in about 2 minutes, but I do want to talk about the Leafs first because they drop a 4-3 overtime decision to the Kings on Thursday. Quentin Byfield with the overtime winner for Los Angeles. And I'm not a big shots on goal guy. I mean, I want to know more about where the shots are coming from, quality versus quantity. But it's hard to ignore that in the 3 home losses for the Leafs, they've been outshot 123-68. And I think what this does is it shows the defensive deficiencies of the Maple Leafs, allowing so many shots. Dennis Hildeby was in goal because Anthony Stolarz is out day-to-day. And at the end of the second period, second Kings goal by Kevin Fiala tied the game 2-2. There was an exchange between Craig Berube and William Nylander. Nylander had a shift of 1 minute and 33 seconds, had a very weak attempt at trying to block Fiala's first shot, and then was outright lazy in getting into the slot to continue his coverage, and that's how that game was tied. And Nylander actually stayed on the bench for a minute or so after the entire team went to the locker room after the second period.
Well, I don't know about Nylander, but I do know that the Toronto Maple Leafs have now lost 4 straight. 3 of them at home. These games that we're talking about, and I can't emphasize this enough, it's bad when the LA Kings come into Toronto. You only get 15 shots. That's bad. And Toronto had only lost 1 home game this season up until these 3 consecutive losses. They're still 7-4-2 at home. They're pitiful on the road so far. 1 win and 4 losses. So we talk about inconsistency. You talk about not knowing what you're going to get. I mean, how about the Toronto Maple Leafs? I know, and you know, that Mitch Marner going to the Vegas Golden Knights hasn't caused this whole thing. It's not. There is something wrong in the water in Toronto. And I got to tell you, there's something wrong in the locker room. There has to be. To get 15 shots at home and to have what you just talked about, the Nylander-Berube thing go on and other things, there's some breakdown in communication going on. That doesn't mean I'm saying it's Craig Berube's fault or Craig Berube should be fired or any of that nonsense. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's some breakdown because the players are not committing to the program. They're not. They're not doing their assignments. So we'll see what happens in Toronto, but a shoe has to drop here.
They've got the injury to Auston Matthews, who's expected to miss probably another week, and Scotty Lawton is on IR. Both having been tangled up with Nikita Zadorov of the Bruins in games last Saturday and on Tuesday night. But beyond that, and I hate to pin this on Auston Matthews, but you're talking about things going on that may not be right in the room. Is Matthews truly the right leader? Because so many teams have their best player as their captain. But I don't think that that's always the case, that your best player should be the captain. And should that title have been removed from John Tavares, who, by the way, had 2 goals on Thursday. He's got 11 goals, 23 points in 18 games. Tavares' career high in points is 88, the first year that he got to the Maple Leafs. And he is showing leadership and fire that is worthy of a captain's title.
It is. Let's go back and review what happened in Toronto. John Tavares was anointed captain, worthy of that for his length of stay in the National Hockey League. He'd also been the captain of the New York Islanders in Toronto. He was given the captaincy, as I said. He was going into the last year of his contract. They felt his career was going to go down. They had all these young guys, and they decide, well, Auston is the future of the team, so let's work with John to make a smooth transition to letting the future of the team be the captain of the team. John Tavares bought into that, played the good soldier, played the act that they wanted him to, that he endorsed it publicly, and has played so good last season that they had to extend his contract. They had to keep him there. They couldn't let him walk. And then this season, the first of his 4-year deal that he re-signed, he's been their best player. Now, that's all rear view mirror stuff, because you can't go back and undo how you were thinking a year ago that you made that decision to make your best player the captain and your future player. But in hindsight now, it's a bad move, right? Because if you knew John Tavares was going to play the way he played last season, and you knew what he was going to do for you this season, he is easily the captain. Like, you don't see the C on his shirt, but it's there somewhere because he's playing like the best leader they have, and one of the best leaders in hockey. Honestly and truly, Vic, he reminds me of Sidney Crosby. He's that kind of a leader. He's a guy that you get it from him every single night. He gives you everything he has. He never says die. And that's the qualities that I think Sidney Crosby has. And to me, he reminds me so much of him when I see him playing. And, you know, I have so much admiration for him and the way he's handled this last year and a quarter since they transferred the captaincy over to Auston Matthews.
Right now, it's not a playoff team.
They're not, well, not in the last 4 games, that's for sure. I don't know how they're going to break out of this, but we'll find out. Maybe the right tonic for them is a trip to the United Center to play against the Chicago Blackhawks. That's what they're going to have on Saturday, and we'll see if that's the tonic to break them out of this.
But Blackhawks, no pushovers any longer. So that will be an interesting game on Saturday. But a team that's having no issues whatsoever, as we shift over to teams that are cruising along with some streaks of their own. Colorado Avalanche, 12-1-5 after a 6-3 win over Buffalo on Thursday. Marty Necas, 2 goals, 2 assists. Gavin Brindley. This was a player that was acquired from Columbus for Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood. Goal and an assist. Has some offensive flair to his game, and that's going to be necessary because Val Nichushkin is out week to week with a lower body injury suffered in the win against Anaheim on Tuesday. But just what the Avalanche need, another player that can score.
Yeah. Well, and as I said just earlier, they've been the one consistent team night to night. When you see Colorado playing, it usually means there's a W coming for the Avalanche. They seem to really be clicking past their goaltender problems. 1 year ago today, remember, they had 2 different goaltenders, and they had to find a way to get out of it because neither of them were performing. So they seem to have put together a pretty good group here now, and we'll see how they keep going. But, when you have McKinnon and Makar on a team, it's pretty tough to go bad for very long. I mean, those guys are so good. They're just amazing. And then you surround them with all these other guys that we talk about. It's just a really well put together team.
But as I've said, once these games start to get tighter, when we get into the last quarter of the season, I really want to see how this team defends when it really counts, because this is all great now, but as we've seen, this is a club that should have had deeper player runs than they've had. And part of the reason is because of their defensive play. But right now, everything going right in Denver.
That's for sure.
The New York Rangers are now 8-1-1 on the road after a 7-3 win in Tampa on Wednesday. Vincent Trocheck continues his quest for the Hart Trophy since coming back from injury. Scored 2 goals. Will Cooley had 2 goals. Artemi Panarin had 4 assists. He has 3 goals and 9 points in 4 games since shaving his head.
Yeah, so good for him. He did that last year too, or the year before, and it worked for him. So I don't think we're going to try that though.
Considering November is Movember, where a lot of players grow mustaches, he is taking the opposite tact to get out of his early season slump.
You know, it's funny. I don't hear that Movember thing anymore. Are they still doing that? Because I don't hear about it. I used to hear about it all the time when people would mention it. You're the first person that's mentioned it that I've heard of. So I don't know if they're still doing it or not.
Well, I don't know. I know you and I aren't doing it.
No, I'm not doing it. I used to do that, but that was the 80s.
Me too. For the Lightning, Victor Hedman, Ron McDonough, Anthony Cirelli all missed this game. Brandon Hagel played only 3 shifts. He was hit by Carson Soucy and had to leave the game. So heading into a weekend battle with Florida, which we're going to talk about at the end of this show, not only are the Lightning a little bit banged up, but in that game against the Rangers, Andrei Vasilevsky gave up goals on the first 3 shots that he faced.
Yeah, he didn't look good at all. I hope his hips are good, because he had that hip issue a while back. He didn't look like the same guy. But before we leave the Rangers and one of the teams that's cruising, hold off on planning that parade route, because they did beat a banged-up Tampa team 7-3. They did beat a run-of-the-mill team in Nashville, and run-of-the-mill is being kind. That's the 2 wins they've had since they got a 5-0 spanking from the Crosstown Islanders in Madison Square Garden. So we got to hold off on the parade route. They now go into Columbus and play on Saturday, and we'll see if they can keep this road winning going.
How about the New Jersey Devils? 12-4-1. They get a 4-3 overtime win in Chicago on Wednesday. Simon Nemec, defenseman, gets a hat trick, including the overtime winner. He's the 3rd defenseman in franchise history to record a hat trick after Uli Heimer in 1984 and Barry Beck as a member of the Colorado Rockies in 1977. Remember that this franchise actually started in Kansas City, moved to Denver before settling in New Jersey. A lot of things going right in the Garden State.
And you know what? They're healthy. That's the biggest thing with this team, is that Jack Hughes is healthy. That he's the straw that stirs the drink. But we predicted this in our summer coolers. We predicted that they would have a good team. We got to mention every one of our predictions that is going right, because so many of them are going wrong.
And we mentioned those 2, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we do. They've gone into overtime their last 4 straight games, the New Jersey Devils have, and they've come out of those with 3 wins. Only 1 overtime loss, and, of course, that was to the New York Islanders, who we've mentioned quite a bit on this show so far.
How about a tip of the hat to the Ottawa Senators? They get a 5-3 win over the Boston Bruins on Thursday, snapping the Bees' 7-game winning streak. Tim Stützle, 2 goals and an assist, including the game winner late in the third period, followed by an empty netter. Ottawa is 9-5-4, 7-1-3 in their last 11. They're doing this and appear comfortable without their captain, Brady Tkachuk. So Tkachuk is nearing his return, and they have been able to not only stay at the water level, but get above it. Says something about the character of this team. They made the playoffs a year ago, and a real solid job by Travis Green behind that Senators bench.
Yeah, you said it all right. I mean, the only loss they've had in the last week has been an overtime loss to the Dallas Stars. Before that, their only loss was to the Boston Bruins in Boston way back. So, yeah, things are going good for the Ottawa Senators, and Travis Green has got his guys performing without Brady Tkachuk. Because a lot of nights you look at that team and you think the whole team is about Brady Tkachuk, the way he plays. I mean, how are they going to do it without him, without his feistiness and nastiness? Well, they seem to be getting by now. They've got the LA Kings coming in. Kings played in Montreal, went to the Toronto Maple Leafs last night, and now finished that little Eastern Canada swing on Saturday night in Ottawa.
And you mentioned how the perception is that the team is Brady Tkachuk and everybody else. Stützle is a stud. And Shane Pinto, who has 9 goals, just signed a 4-year, $30 million extension. He would have been a pending RFA come this summer, and certainly a far cry for where Pinto was 2 years ago when he had to sit out the first half of the season due to that little bit of gambling probe.
That thing where he was doing something with buddies back on Long Island while he was in Ottawa training. So that's almost good that happened and sent a warning out to the rest of the players so that we don't end up like the NBA.
Yeah, amen to that. How about treading water here? Edmonton Oilers, a 5-4 loss in Columbus on Thursday. Matthew Olivier, 2 goals and an assist after going with just 1 goal and 5 points up until Thursday night. He had 18 goals last season, remember. But getting back to the Oilers, they're 8-7-4 and 1-1-1 since the pounding by Colorado last Saturday. They are now 2 games into a 7-game trip that continues Saturday in Carolina. One bright spot here that I saw in this game, Matt Savoie scored his 2nd goal. Played also a little bit with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and it appeared that there was a little bit of chemistry there between those 3 players. And even though Zach Hyman's return may be as early as Saturday, they're still looking for other forwards to step up. And this is a key piece if Edmonton is going to start to make their move, because as we mentioned earlier in the week, players like Isaac Howard, Noah Philp, and Savoie have to be the ones that step up, because you got to remember, Trent Frederick was the first guy to get the shot playing with the 2 superstars, and that hasn't exactly worked out. So to see a little bit of offense from Savoie did make a key mistake on a goal that wound up being disallowed on an offside because he made a deke with the puck before entering the zone, and that's what caused the offside. But you can see a little bit of flash there and a little bit of potential with Savoie.
Yeah, but I want to talk a little bit about the Edmonton Oilers, and you talk about the inconsistency or the unpredictability about teams in the league. And listen to the month of November. They got an overtime win at home against Chicago. Then they went into St. Louis and lost 3-2. Then they went into Dallas and lost in a shootout. And then they came home after 3 days off and got obliterated by the Colorado Avalanche right in their own building, 9-1. They turn around 48 hours later and win an overtime game against Columbus Blue Jackets, who are not exactly a Stanley Cup threat this year. Then they go into Philadelphia. They go east, and we talked about how maybe this road trip would help them and help get them going. Well, their first two games have been a squeaker in Philadelphia, an overtime win, and then a loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets in regulation. So that's the first two. And now where are they going? Raleigh, North Carolina, to play a really good team in the Carolina Hurricanes. So they've had a tough month. They don't look good. Zach Hyman's coming back. He's probably going to play against Carolina, and we'll see if that is what they need in the soup, because there's something wrong there too.
You got to remember that game in Philly also, that they actually gave up a goal with 23 seconds left in regulation, and it was waved off by offside. And that set the table for them being able to win in overtime.
Yep,
so,
yeah.
I
remember that. Yep, that's true. But they are struggling for the Edmonton Oilers, for the team that's been to the final the last 2 years in a row, for the team that has arguably the two best players in the league, at least two of the best forwards, certainly the best player in McDavid, and Draisaitl is right up there in the top three guys in the league. And then they got a $10 million defenseman in Bouchard, and then an $8 million defenseman in Nurse. And
nine,
and these are the results you're getting?
Yeah.
I'd be pretty pissed off if I was the owner.
Quick note on Columbus before we hit the rest of the injury news. Boone Jenner, out long-term with an upper body injury suffered in the second period against Seattle on Tuesday. He was limited to 26 games last year with a shoulder injury, which required surgery. And as we move forward into a couple of other injuries, Dylan Sandberg, defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets, made his season debut in the Winnipeg's 5-3 loss in Seattle. Ryan Strome of Anaheim had an assist in his first game of the season in a 6-3 loss for the Ducks against Detroit. They have now lost 2 straight. In that same game, goalie John Gibson for the Red Wings left after getting clipped in the foot late in the second period. Cam Talbot came in and finished that game. While we're on the subject of injuries, we talked about Brady Tkachuk. His brother Matt may be back on the ice in a couple of weeks, and this would kind of fit into the timetable that the Panthers are looking at, that he could come back sometime in December. But while both players are on the mend, they are launching their own podcast on Thursday. They are the first active NHLers to have their own podcast and talk show. It's called Wingmen, which maybe they can have us on their show as a couple of wing nuts.
That's a good one. I want to jump back to the Winnipeg Jets for a minute. You talked about Dylan Sandberg having made his season debut in the Jets' 5-3 loss in Seattle. Let's talk about something that's unpredictable, and that's the Winnipeg Jets. If you look at their last 5 games, all road games, what a horrible road trip.
Yeah.
Lost in LA 3-0, lost in San Jose 2-1, lost in Anaheim 4-1. They beat the Knuckleheads 5-3 in Vancouver. And then they lose to Seattle, as you mentioned, last night, 5-3. And now they're winding up their trip in Calgary on Saturday. We'll have to see if they can salvage a win. They're already going to be way under 500 on this 6-game road trip. And that's not something that you expect out of the team of Winnipeg's level. I mean, they're a true contender, but they're not playing well right now.
Yeah, like you said, unpredictable, never know from night to night. And I'm going to jump back ahead to this podcast that the Tkachuk brothers are doing, because talk about unpredictable. Their show will have unfiltered stories, sharp takes, brotherly banter, and rare locker room insights. Is this going to be Spittin' Chicklets 2 with potty talk? Because I think that's one thing that you and I have stayed away from in the over year and a half that we've been doing the show.
It might be, but it's probably they're sitting there saying, look, we can do this from wherever we are. You can be in Canada and I can be in Florida and we can do this thing. Everybody will come on with us because we know everybody and we'll just have a lot of fun. And probably they've already got a sponsor because somebody would step up to sponsor the Kachuk brothers before they'll step up to sponsor somebody less well known. So we'll see what it is. I'm sure they think they know it's going to be a lot of fun. They made those commercials in Canada. I think it was for Kia with their mom. And I know these guys are very, very close. Obviously, they're closer brothers, but I mean, they're very close as brothers. It'll be fun to listen to and to see how it goes.
As two of the great chirpers in the league, let's see how clean they're able to keep it.
Maybe the first guest then should be Brad Marchand.
Why not? We have a passing to report. Earlier in the week, we'd spoken about longtime linesman Leon Stickle and former Flyer and first general manager for the Ottawa Senators, Mel Bridgman. And Larry Brooks, longtime New York Post columnist, Hockey Hall of Famer, passed away Thursday, the age of 75, after a brief battle with cancer. He entered the Hall in 2018. His Sunday columns, called Slapshots, were one of those must-reads in hockey circles. Neil, you knew Brooks very, very well.
When you were running the New York Rangers, he wasn't a must-read. You didn't want to read what he had to say then. But as long as you're on the outside, you got some good scoops from Larry and good banter about things. He was a tough writer, though. He was doing the Rangers for many years, and he had a lot of battles with a lot of people because he took some very unfair shots at people. And that's where I always say, you got to remember that that's the writer, not the person. I had a very good relationship with him, especially after I left the Rangers. I'm very saddened to think that he's gone because he's one of the characters in this play that we live in. We live in this theater where, you have media people, you have hockey players, you have GMs, coaches, fans, league executives. It's all part of a big theater. And Larry Brooks was part of that theater, and we'll miss him and his contribution to the National Hockey League for many years.
One of the most noted confrontations that Brooks had was with former Ranger coach John Tortorella, who, on The Point on Thursday on ESPN, gave quite the tribute to Brooks and said that what we see in those clips that are all over the internet is a slice of what their relationship wound up becoming. And Torts respected the hard edge that Brooks had, and that he would not shy away and write something and then not show up at the team headquarters the next day. He'd be right there asking questions all over again. Eventually, they did reconcile, and Torts actually reached out to Brooks before his passing.
Yeah, and I guess I could say I had the same sort of relationship when I ran the Rangers. I was very annoyed at his unfair shots that he would give people. And that's what Tortorella got mad about, too, is that he took shots at players and people. And that one that we always see that clip about fighting when Torts asked him, have you ever been in a fight in your life? Because Brooks had written something about one of his players in fighting. And so that really annoyed John because he wanted to stick up for his players. And let's face it, I liked Larry, but I'm just calling it as it is. Mark Everson wasn't a fair writer. He covered us before Larry did, and I was mad at him all the time because that's the New York Post.
We're going to move ahead to this weekend's schedule. On Friday, the Global Series in Sweden between the Penguins and the Predators. First of those two games is at 2 o'clock Eastern. Teams will also play on Sunday. The highlighted players will be Philip Forsberg of the Predators, Erik Karlsson for the Penguins. Also looking at that Islanders-Utah game as two clubs missing the playoffs a year ago and making some noise trying to get in this time around. On Saturday, Tampa Bay and Florida meet for the first time this regular season. Remember their two preseason games in early October where they combined for 508 penalty minutes, 26 misconducts, 9 fighting majors, 2 match penalties, and a pair of suspensions.
A lot of times the preseason it gets like that because people are trying to prove themselves, and they won't do that in the regular season when there's 2 points on the line. It's a good rivalry, Tampa Bay and Florida. They've won 5 Stanley Cups now between those two teams.
Also Saturday, as we'd mentioned earlier, Edmonton and Carolina, and the possible debut for this season for Zach Hyman, who's long been missed by the Oilers since getting injured in the conference final against Dallas. And the Rangers in Columbus, much like the Islanders in Utah, trying to find their way into the playoffs. Rangers and Blue Jackets on the outside looking in last year. So those teams are going to be sitting on the bubble for most of this season. Going to be an important game there. And on Sunday, the Islanders in Colorado. This is the first game for Brock Nelson against his former team. He was traded on March 6th of last season.
And that's going to be something. That's in Colorado, so they won't be doing a tribute or anything. But I look forward to Brock playing in UBS Arena later in the season, and I'm sure there'll be something done for him there. He had a great career with the New York Islanders, so a really good player for the New York Islanders.
And another good test for an Islander team that is surging on this road trip. Don't forget that our website is NHLWraparound.com. The latest piece in New York Centric about Dawson Mercer. And we hear about Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt getting a lot of the headlines. Mercer, 9 goals, 16 points. We also have Neil's Nuggets and Smith's Picks. You were 2-2-1 on Thursday, but I know that you're looking ahead for a big weekend.
It's just getting harder and harder to predict these things. Winnipeg and Seattle last night. How many people outside of Seattle would have picked Seattle to win? And yet, 5-3 final.
Check out those picks exclusively on NHLWraparound.com. That'll wrap up our show for today. We'll be back with short shifts on Monday and NHL Wraparound next Wednesday. In the meantime, enjoy the hockey this weekend.